Well, there are few things as exhilarating in the fishing world as watching a bass explode from cover and chase down a lure and just eat it. It just gets the adrenaline going. Well, this particular lure and presentation has drawn more bass from a distance for me than about anything else I have ever used, and we know it as the fleeing baitfish presentation. Super simple, a soft jerk bait. I like to use a straight tail, paddle tail I use quite a bit too. They work really, really well. These lures skip well, and then they present super easily on the way back to the boat as well. Now this fleeing baitfish, it triggers the instincts of the bass. It triggers that feeding instinct. Think about, smallmouth. When you see smallmouth in a wolf pack type of a situation and they just try to get this lure or prey away from each other. Think about it activating a big school of largemouth with a crankbait. This is the exact same type of idea, and it's probably underutilized out there in the bass fishing world. Now, as far as the actual presentation, I like to go ahead and skip it out there and then let it skip all the way back. So I'll use, a traditional skipping type of a cast to, because it has that fleeing baitfish look. So I'll skip it on out there, leave it set just a second, and then I want it to jump and skip and hop all the way back to me. And if you've got a high-speed reel, like this one is an 8-to-3-to-1, basically all you have to do is reel it. You don't have to do a whole lot with the rod. Keep the rod tip up a little bit and just reel and start and stop. Let it sink every now and then, and it just lets that lure skip out of the water. Think about if a minnow is getting chased. That's exactly what it looks like. And even with a high-speed reel, we are never going to bring this lure back faster than those bass that want to get it. So you don't have to worry about that. We're just trying to get that feeding instinct triggered where they don't want to miss out on a meal. Like, hey, somebody else is chasing this thing down, I want in on that as well. That's what we're trying to do. Well, there's some key factors that I look for that tell me, it's probably going to work pretty good. Number one is when I'm seeing some sort of activity shallow, small bass, big bass, panfish, minnows, doesn't matter. If there is life shallow, I know that this presentation has a really good chance of drawing some vicious strikes. Number two is when I'm fishing just massive, massive areas of vegetation. That could be submerged vegetation. It could be vegetation that's even a little bit emergent. When bass get in that stuff, it can be really overwhelming and daunting to try to figure out where they're holding what they're doing. Well, this fleeing baitfish presentation covers a ton of water really quickly, and it catches them out of this type of stuff, and worst case scenario, it gets them to reveal themselves, and then you can go back with something more particular or a little bit slower and pick apart one specific area. But when I'm fishing huge weed beds, man, this just lets me know where they're at and oftentimes catches them. Number three is when I'm fishing shallow and there's just an abundance of shoreline cover, and that could be docks, overhanging brush, tree limbs, whatever it might be, where it's just when you've got one of those shorelines and you're like, man, this looks super fishy. In those situations, if I'm in a boat, I want to parallel, make long casts out there along this shoreline. If I'm walking down the bank, I'm going to go ahead and still cast parallel, at a 90-degree angle to my body and just parallel that lure back. It is highly efficient because it's in the zone all the time, the entire length of the cast, from the beginning of it all the way back. It is working for you. And number four is I like to use it as an alternative to traditional topwaters. There are times when we're out there with our buzz baits and whopper ploppers, and walking baits, that type of stuff where, we'll see the bass kind of come up behind it and turn away. They shy away. Well, I like to look at this as a little bit more subtle type of a presentation. And a lot of times it makes the difference to get those fish that are not committing to a more traditional topwater. They just see this and can't resist. And the really cool thing about this presentation has a very, very high hookup percentage or hookup ratio. When those bass just come exploding out of cover, you know, out of a weed bed, out from underneath that brush, and you just see them waking through that water, kind of that shark jaws type of a look. They are zeroed in, dialed in, and you know they're going to hit. The adrenaline just gets going, and most often the rod just loads up. They take it and you just feel weight, lean back into it, you've got them. And if they do miss it, they usually circle right back around if you let it sit there a second and just absolutely obliterate it. And hey, if you would like to watch a video on the reel that I'm using, the skipping and pitching reel, go ahead and check this one out right here. And make sure that you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.